So now to see it fully materialize and actually have it announced that there's an organization that previously used R3 Corda that is now rolling over to Canton technology and is backed by all these other institutions that all build on Canton network is huge in my
But I think back 10 years ago when I was at R3 and we're tokenizing bonds and equities, we were always going back to TradFi rails to settle. It was still like inefficient.
organizations that previously used R3 Corda are going to roll over to Canton. In today's video breakdown, we're going to go over some huge announcements over the past 2 weeks on Canton that have taken place. I'm going to play some video clips for you guys. So I'm just going to kick it off here because this video breakdown literally only has 63 views, was just uploaded yesterday. Shout out to the researchers for this one. Just take a second here, bend your ear and listen to what he says about the opportunity on Canton right now.
Do you think that the real adoption, institutional adoption happening already now? Or are most of the huge players are still in the extended pilot mode?
Well, you know, like any big industry, super intermediated with a lot of people in their own sphere, it's always hard to make that move fast. But that being said, over the last, say, 15 months, I see that the reputational risk is gone. Like the Trump election plus Chair Atkins, he sent a message that America is open for business in crypto. From a day to another one, we saw that there is no more reputational risk for institutions, so they just went in. I think they also understood very fast that this is their survival moment. Because 5 years of teams, super lean, preparing themselves, now going after licenses, and them, incumbent, trying to fight for their statu quo, there is a lot of tension. And if they don't fight now, they risk their own business. So I think they all made more than just creating a digital asset position and the head of digital asset to go everywhere. I think now they are, after the POC, no more proof of concept, they are like, okay, how do we make sure that this moves on chain like by the end of the year? And I also think that the message sent to the SEC, from the SEC to the DTCC with the no action letter, was more than just a no action letter. It was the message, the official message that, guys, you have 2 years. Okay, before the midterms, you have 2 years, like, rush. Make the change, because once it is done, it is done. And it will be hard to come back on it. And finally, I think also that we should all push for that. Because the incumbent, they need to succeed. They need to continue to guarantee the trust in the market, because if they are not there, we don't know what happens, and uncertainty is bad. So I think they all understood that. They are all building, they are all doing things, and yes, when I say building, you have two ways. You have the PR side, okay, with all the communication, and then you have the concrete side. The big news that I see is that the builder side is very structured, is very knowledgeable, and is not cherry picking. I don't see something very partisan. Some players are partisan, but most of the one that I discuss with, institutions, they are very open to ecosystems. And I think this is a big win for us. It means that they are here to build and to bring their own effort to the whole industry. So I think it's going to the right direction.
Okay, just a couple of highlights that are going to be important as we progress through this video breakdown. He specifically talked about how there's no more reputational risk for institutions to come on chain. He said that most institutions are considering moving on chain by the end of the year, and that the SEC no action letter and the DTCC's involvement gave a warning signal to these institutions that they have 2 years to get their stuff together, which puts us before 2030 in the 2030 agenda for these institutions to really flood on chain. So I just wanted to play that to give you guys a realistic perspective from a Canton super validator and an individual business organization that's building Canton applications and so on and so forth, and has a huge say in the Canton network. From his perspective, a gentleman who talks to institutions, who's sitting there on panel discussions and whatnot with institutional insights, so you guys can kind of hear those timelines, right? End of the year, 2 years max for these institutions to get it together. Now, what's happening behind the scenes, all right? How can we see as retail investors that all of this stuff is really about to come flooding in. DFNS just announced this just today, 7 hours ago. As a matter of fact, DFNS is now a signing provider for Canton Wallet Gateway. DFNS, obviously, of course, an institutional wallet provider, digital asset platform for financial institutions. And they just announced this today, May 8th, 2026, Canton Wallet Gateway support. I'm not going to read this entire thing. I'm just going to read some of the highlights. It says here, institutional wallet infrastructure for Canton Network just got a lot easier to wire up. As of this week, the DFNS signing driver is officially merged into the Canton Wallet Gateway, giving any CIP 103 compliant DApps on Canton a direct standardized path to DFNS secured keys. If you're a financial institution, custodian, or fintech building on Canton, the practical changes are, and I just highlighted one, says for teams evaluating Canton, the barrier to onboarding institutional clients just dropped. I repeat, the barrier to onboarding institutional clients just dropped. And do y'all remember what the lady, I believe her name's Jess Holgraves from Wallet Connect, said in a video that I played just a couple of weeks ago about these institutions wanting access to Canton? If you guys did not see that video, I'll play it for you all real fast. It'll take me 2 seconds to find it. But she specifically said that institutions are asking for Canton.
Also, over the last few years, we've welcomed more and more institutional and custodian wallets to the network. People like Fireblocks, Hextrust, BitGo, Anchorage. And it's at these places that major institutions, hedge funds, and banks are storing their digital assets. And we were hearing a lot from those customers, when are you going to do Canton? Because that's what we were going to want to be using over the coming years. So that's really...
We've been hearing a lot from institutions. When are you going to use or integrate Canton? Because that's what we're going to want to be using in the next couple of years. That's not coming from me. That's coming directly from the CEO of Wallet Connect, right? And now we're seeing major institutional infrastructure providers like DFNS announce things that allow these digital wallets to connect directly to institutional infrastructure. So again, for teams evaluating Canton, the barrier to onboarding institutional clients has now just dropped. Instead of asking a prospect to adopt a wallet vendor that may or may not match their existing custody setup, you can now point them at the gateway and let them bring whichever gateway supported provider they already trust. Increasingly, that's DFNS. And we know DFNS is also a validator on the Canton network, right? So I thought that was interesting that was just announced today. Also, this past week, we had Amina Bank, a Swiss financial market supervisory authority, FINMA, regulated crypto bank with the global reach, become the first bank to support Canton Coin, the native token of Canton Network, offering custody and trading services to its clients. Canton Network, of course, the public privacy-preserving blockchain built for capital markets. That was a huge announcement this week. Excuse me, again, showing more institutional interest and availability. Then we had the first US ETF offering give direct exposure to Canton, now listing on NASDAQ. 21 shares TCAN launched just yesterday, with 21 shares serving as an active validator on the global synchronizer participating on the network. So yet again, more huge institutional access to Canton network. This was just from yesterday, and just reading some of the highlights, it says, the Canton network has attracted significant institutional interest, giving its focus on privacy-preserving infrastructure for capital markets, said Andres Valencia, EVP of Investment Management at 21 Shares. When you see names like NASDAQ, Moody's, and Deloitte supporting a common blockchain infrastructure, you are looking at infrastructure that has the potential to reshape how data and capital move across global markets. With the launch of TCAM, we are providing the U.S. market with institutional-grade access to this transformation, backed by our 8-year track record of crypto-native expertise. What makes Canton different is not simply that institutions can hold digital assets on-chain, but that they can coordinate real financial workflows across firms without giving up privacy, control, or compliance. As more investors seek exposure to this ecosystem, products like TCAN help broaden access to infrastructure purpose-built for regulated markets, said George Schneider, global head of RWA at Digital Asset. So yet again, another major announcement this past week involving institutional access to the Canton network. Now, with that in mind, the announcement from 21 Shares, this was from the 21 Shares YouTube. Again, shout out to the researchers for this. Only has 222 views. 222, that's a good number. 1 day ago. And I want you guys to listen to what they say here, because they talk about how R3 was a funny project. And what do all these other blockchains talk about all the time, like Hedera, Ripple, Stellar, they all talk about the Hyperledger Foundation and Hyperledger, right? And Corda and whatnot. Okay. Listen to what Yuval says here. This gives some crazy historical context about Hyperledger and IBM, about how it was created back in the day, and now digital asset was actually the one who created it. Listen to what he says here.
10 years ago from now. I can't believe I'm saying that. But at that time, there were also, several kind of enterprise, let's say, blockchain efforts of launching enterprise chains, whether it be, Kinexys from JP Morgan, or whether it be the early IBM enterprise chain as well.
I think Hyperledger was the name, right?
Hyperledger, yeah.
And then we had Corda and R3 and all those funny projects.
Exactly.
If you want a piece of history, digital asset actually bought a company called Hyperledger. This whole Hyperledger movement actually got started by digital asset and IBM. And when we needed a name for the foundation, we were like, well, we just bought a company called Hyperledger. Here you go. You can take the name. Just a piece of history. Yeah, we bought a company called Hyperledger in 2015. That's where the name comes from.
That's right.
That's insanity, right? He talks about how the name Hyperledger came originally from digital asset themselves. So that was interesting to see, which leads me over here to this, considering that in that same sentence right there, they mentioned R3 being a funny project, right? Check this out. This is crazy. And this goes back to what I said in November and December, where I mentioned that R3, it never worked. And I tried to show video proof on this from systemically important organizations like Citi saying that on stage, individuals from DRW sitting on stage with, or a panel discussion with Kathy Wood saying the same exact thing. And so now, fast forward, we're seeing in real time that organizations are moving from R3 Corda. They're going to stop using the R3 Corda technology and they're going to use Canton network. So check this out. And if you guys remember what this dude said, remember I told you all to pay attention to what he says. He talks about the SEC no action letter and how this gave institutions 2 years to get their ish together and come on chain, right? So check this out. This is all going to tie in once I play these video clips for you guys. So I said here in this post, this is bigger than most realize. The receipts are right in front of us. HQLAX confirms a planned migration to the Canton network. Not only that, HQLAX openly states its platform is partnered alongside major tier 1 banks, Deutsche Börse, and uses R3 Corda for now. And now, with Broadridge and digital asset backing the next phase of growth, this message is getting louder. Traditional finance is not experimenting anymore. It is building and it is moving on chain. So before I go over these new breaking fundamentals that came out from Broadridge, let's go back and just listen to the gentleman from DRW and Kathy Woods talk about R3 Corda. Listen to what they say here.
Facilitations using blockchains find that as soon as they move dollar stablecoins to Mexico, that the Mexican peso all of a sudden moves because everybody knows what's coming next, which is just highlights the problem that happens on these when things are completely transparent.
It's interesting. Do you remember, this probably was either 2014 or 15. Do you remember one, which was tried by the various banks?
Yeah, I think it was R3, but yes.
Oh, was it R3? I knew it was R something. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, R3. It never worked. For reasons you just said. R3, it never worked. For reasons you just said.
Now, when she said that, I was like, okay, right, that's one source. This lady, Kathy Woods, albeit she's obviously, of course, Kathy freaking Woods, right? So, I mean, if you're not taking what she says into consideration, then, I mean, by all means, you think you're smarter than a multi-millionaire, so be it. But I needed to find more source information. And then I was listening to the Ondo Summit, and we had a representative from Citi.
I'll start. So I think that
she is the global head of digital assets, Citi's treasury and trade solutions.
Now that we have,
and she's sitting next to now Swift representative at the Ondo Summit, was the current Swift representative, the chief innovation officer at Swift, Tom Z. So that's going to go hand in hand, something I'm going to show you guys here in just a second, because Tom Z actually defended Canton in a recent post, but nonetheless, listen to what she says here.
have cash on ledger and it's pretty established, and you're starting to see it scale. We talked about, we opened kind of where we are in 25 versus where we are now, processing millions versus processing billions. I think the next evolution is really that multi-asset, right? That we've talked about DVP and atomic settlement for ages, right? But I think back 10 years ago when I was at R3 and we're tokenizing bonds and equities, we were always going back to TradFi rails to settle. It was still like inefficient. Bonds and equities, right? But I think back 10 years ago when I was at R3 and we're tokenizing bonds and equities, we were always going back to TradFi rails to settle. It was still like inefficient. And now that we have that.
Okay, so remember, Kathy Woods just said back in 2014, 2015, or whatever era she said, it was roughly around the 10-year time frame ago. She said R3 never worked. This lady from Citi just said 10 years ago when she worked at R3, they were always finding themselves going back to TradFi rails to settle because R3 was inefficient, right? And she just mentioned that we are in the process of moving from millions to billions processing and scale. And listen to what Yuval Ruse at a recent panel discussion just said. This was announced from the Milken Institute just a couple days ago. And listen to what Yuval Ruse projects in the coming months ahead.
From our audience, where do you think tokenization is genuinely changing institutional finance today, and where is it still mostly a story?
So I'm happy. Like I said, we are doing $400 billion of repo every day. I think within the next 12 months, we will cross $1 trillion of volume a day, which is close to 10% of the global daily volume. People are not doing that because they think it's cool, right? We're talking about UBS, SocGen, Barclays. You know, I can keep on going. These are not organizations that do it from the goodness of their heart to prove that tokenization is cool. They're doing it because it's much more capital efficient. They do that because they can reuse collateral intraday, which historically they couldn't do it. We're going to see the first prime broker start to do on-chain prime brokerage because they prove to the buy side that they can be more capital efficient. We have life insurance, issuing life insurance and annuities.
Yep.
We do post-trade of physical commodities. We do settlement of equities between China and Hong Kong. And I can just keep on going. Again, you're not hearing about it in the news because, like I said, it's the pipes. It's not that sexy or interesting.
It's sexy,
but it actually provides a lot of utility to the customers, which actually translates to utility to the end consumer.
So he talks about how in the next 12 months, they're going to go from processing hundreds of billions of dollars to trillions of dollars. And if you remember what this dude said, he projects that by the end of the year, you're going to see a whole bunch more institutions come on chain, and that institutions via the no action letter of the SEC have 2 years to get their stuff together, right? And we come back to this stage, this panel discussion. We had the lady from Citi, previously worked at R3, sitting on stage with Tom Z in a post where Charles Hoskinson's attacked Canton back. Look at the date. This is 12/26/25. Okay, remember when the Ondo Summit took place? At the Ondo Summit, Tom was still the chief innovation officer at Swift. And right down here, Tom defended, so working at Swift, he defended Canton Network, right? And he says here, many people understand what makes Web3 unique and meaningful. That's why finance is using it. There are many good innovations being rolled out globally. I repeat, there are many good innovations being rolled out globally. Canton Finance is prioritizing privacy and control for TPS and unverified scale claims. We had this lady talk about R3. We had Kathy Woods talk about R3, how it didn't work. Now look at this freaking announcement. And remember what Yuval just said about how they process hundreds of billions of dollars, and that's on repo platform, Broadridge's distributed ledger technology repo platform. And look at what Broadridge just announced. This is crazy. To prove that they are rolling over from R3 to a network like Canton. To wrap up my case, this is from this year, April 21st, 2026, so within the last month. And it says, HQLAX, a leading provider of digital collateral mobility solutions, today announced that it has secured strategic minority investments from global fintech leader Broadridge Financial Solutions and Digital Asset in its Series C1 funding round. The investment will support HQLAX's next phase of growth, including continued evolution of its technology platform, in collaboration with Broadridge's distributed ledger repo platform and a planned migration to the Canton network. Together, these initiatives will leverage complementary capabilities to support regulated market use cases across global securities, finance, and repo industries. The backing from Broadridge and Digital Asset reflects growing industry momentum behind interoperable, privacy-preserving blockchain solutions with the Canton network, enabling connectivity across regulated capital markets. Then, right here. I was like, okay, let's go look into HQLAX real fast. And here in its bio and its about, I noticed that it says that it has been developed in partnership with major tier 1 banks, Deutsche Börse, and R3 Corda, right? So I was like, okay, that's interesting considering that now they are planning this migration over to Canton Network. So let me dig into this a little bit deeper. So I did. I went over to HQLAX and looked up their collateral mobility platform, their technology platform. And it does say right here that that platform currently is provided by R3 Corda, right? However, look at what was just freaking announced to rest my case 2 days ago, May 6, 2026, from what I was telling everybody months ago, not to say toot my own horn or anything, but just to show that the research works when you pay attention to what these institutional players and participants are saying and not have like these retail biased opinions. Look at this. This is crazy. May 6, 2026. DLT Collateral Mobility Platform HQLAX gets the SEC no action letter for use in its activity. HQLAX, the DLT Collateral Mobility Platform, can operate in the U.S. under a no action letter received from the Securities and Exchange Commission. Eurex Clearing recently leveraged the platform to accept DLT-based collateral for margin purposes. One of the first, I repeat, one of the first instances worldwide at a traditional regulated venue. The key benefit is enabling instant transfer rather than needing to wait for T+1 or T+2 settlement. Collateral mobility is of particular interest to TradFi institutions, with HQLAX backed by Deutsche Börse and numerous other systemically important banks, including BNP Paribas, BNY, Citi, Goldman Sachs. All these institutions, mind you, HSBC's Orion does what? Sits on Canton Network. Goldman Sachs digital asset platform sits on Canton Network. BNY, I showed you guys in a previous video breakdown how Canton Network is the underlying architecture layer of BNY's distributed platform, right? I showed JP Morgan just recently announced a partnership with freaking Canton Network. Check this out. The SEC letter was addressed to both HQLAX and Clearstream International, which acts as the trusted third party and collateral custodian for the platform. The underlying assets are locked in place and digital collateral receipts are issued that can be transferred instantly. Technically, this is digital collateral rather than tokenized collateral. And until now, the platform has used the R3 Corda permission blockchain, but HQLAX plans to migrate to Canton technology following the recent funding round in which Broadridge and Canton Network developer Digital Asset participated. Mic drop. That is crazy, crazy work right there. So I wanted to bring that to everybody's attention before anybody else catches on to this, because we've been talking about this now for months. It's now May 8th. We discovered this. When did these videos drop, right? 3 months ago, and I started talking about this back last year in November and December. So now to see it fully materialize and actually have it announced that there's an organization that previously used R3 Corda that is now rolling over to Canton technology and is backed by all these other institutions that all build on Canton Network is huge in my personal opinion, and shows that Canton Network, regardless of what you believe about the tokenomics and the current price action, is a sleeping giant. And when what these people are saying about all of traditional finance rolling on chain actually does, we will see, in my personal opinion, the price action that everybody is aiming to see right now, but has not yet, because again, we're still in this window of this transitional period, right? This transitional period, like this guy said, by the end of the year, in the next 2 years, and then like Yuval Ruz said, in the next 12 months, right? All of these things take time. They are literally restructuring and reorganizing the plumbing of the financial system. And for a fact, Canton is being chosen by traditional financial players, backed by some of the largest globally systemic important banks in the world to run their technology, right? So I wanted to bring that to everybody's attention. That was it for today's particular video breakdown.